All right, we'd like to start? Okay. All right, well, yesterday there were 1,842 new cases of coronavirus, one of which was acquired overseas. We now have 22,598 active cases in Victoria. Sadly, 12 people have lost their lives with COVID-19. A woman in her 50s, a man in his 70s, 3 men and 2 women in their 80s, 3 men and a woman in her 90s, and a man in his 100s. As you'll appreciate, this is a very difficult and challenging time for their family and their friends, and we pass on our deepest sympathies to them during these very difficult times. 786 people are currently in hospital with COVID-19, 147 are in intensive care and 97 are on a ventilator. Of the cases in hospital yesterday, 89% were not fully vaccinated, and of those cases in intensive care, 96% were not fully vaccinated. I'm really proud to announce that 78,928 tests were processed yesterday, and 38,881 vaccines were administered at our state hubs, which is just a fantastic effort. And I want to thank each and every Victorian that made the effort to get themselves tested and went about to get themselves vaccinated. So that now brings us to 89.8% of the over 16 population, which has now had a first dose of COVID-19 vaccine, and 68.5% have had their second dose. So look, I'll now turn to a really exciting announcement and some really wonderful news. So look, as all of you know, Melbourne has got a fantastic reputation as being Australia's capital for live music. And over the last 19 months, this has been an incredibly challenging time for artists, performers, venues, promoters, and techies. It's been an incredibly challenging and difficult time, and we know that it's also been difficult for those people who have got a passion for live music, people who love to go and see bands play at large venues and small venues. Many of us will have gone to see the Live at the Bowl event over the course of last summer to see some fantastic artists like Missy Higgins, for example. And we haven't had that opportunity these last few months because of the virus. But today I'm really pleased to announce an important first step in getting live music back. So on Saturday, the 30th of October, almost 4,000 music fans will be able to attend the Play On Victoria live music event at the Bowl. That's a Sydney Minor Music Bowl as part of our vaccinated economy trial. I'm really pleased to announce the lineup, and it's a fantastic lineup. Baker Boy, who recently appeared at the AFL Grand Final, will be appearing, along with Vicar and Linda Bull, who many of you know have been a mainstay of live music in this country for decades. I don't think they would mind me saying that. The upcoming singer-songwriter Grace Cummings, who is Melbourne-based, and 2 bands with a local and international following, Amel and the Sniffers, as well as King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. This is a fantastic lineup. I haven't been this excited since I got tickets to see Cold Chisel play at Festival Hall. It is going to be that big. So tickets are going to go on sale at 3 p.m. On Friday the 22nd of October, and you can do that via the Arts Centre Melbourne website. It's important to note that this event is going to be delivered in accordance with the COVID Safe Plan. That has been approved by the Chief Health Officer. Now, in relation to the event itself on the night, concert goers will spread across the venue in allocated seats and picnic areas. You're going to have to wear a mask when you're in attendance, unless you're eating or drinking. And most importantly, everyone who attends is going to need to be fully vaccinated. Now, I want to take this opportunity to thank the more than 1.8 million Victorians who have gone and connected their vaccination certificate to their Service Victoria app. It has been just a fantastic take-up. And I want to single out and thank Service Victoria, who have worked tirelessly to bring together the the certificates that sit within the Australian Immunisation Register to our Service Victoria app. Vaccination is our ticket out of this pandemic, but technology is going to play such a vital, important role in getting us back to doing the things that we love the most. And so this is a really fantastic opportunity. If you haven't already connected your vaccination certificate to your Service Victoria app, please go and do so now, because what it means is that when you go to the bowl on the night, you're going to be able to quickly and easily show the security guards that you have checked in and that you're fully vaccinated. And again, this is about how we can use technology to bring our live music sector back to life. Technology is going to be the great enabler to take us back to the things that we love doing most. It's going to enable us to be able to go to great venues, see live music, go back to our galleries, go back to our theatres, look at going back to cinemas. It's going to play a critical role in ensuring that we can enjoy the things that we love most, and the things that define us and give meaning to our lives are all within our grasp. It is only a matter of days away. And it's happened because people have done the right thing. People have gone and got themselves vaccinated. People have gone and used the Service Victoria app to connect their vaccination certificate. This is just so vitally important. And look, I think the other thing I want to recognise and do acknowledge is that this has been really tough for the live music sector. And this is the first sign of us coming back. You know, they say the darkest hour is the hour before the dawn. Well, today's a day where we start to see the sun rising over the horizon in the distance, beckoning us back to the things that we love most, the things that we want to go back and do. We want to see live music. We want to go to the NGV. We want to take our kids to the museum. You know, we want to go and see great sporting events. We want to see this great, thriving metropolis come back to life. Everyone's done their part in terms of getting vaccinated, and I want to thank each and every Victorian who's done that. And I'm so pleased and I'm so proud with the work that Service Victoria has done to get the technology right to enable this to occur. So again, if you love live music, if you're going to love this lineup, I really would encourage people to go out there, celebrate, get on board, get on out there, have a day out with your mates. You've deserved it, you've earned it. This is going to be a celebration of us, of our city, of our great state, and it's the start of the revival and the renaissance of live music here in Victoria. So look, I might throw now to Jerome to provide a further health update, and then we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Minister, and good morning. So 1,842 cases yesterday, taking us to 22,598 active cases of COVID in the community at this point in time. A very similar pattern to the nature of the outbreaks and where they are. Our southeastern suburbs continue to increase their share of new cases, with 575 cases, almost a third of all the cases now in our southeastern suburbs in locations such as Casey and Greater Dandenong. The northern suburbs are seeing a continual reduction in the rate of increase, or we're really seeing a cooling off there in the number of cases. We've seen this trend now for the last week or so. 477 new cases today, around a quarter of today's total, but that's down by about a third from our high point last week. And I'd just like again to thank all the communities and all the organisations working with us in the northern suburbs for that phenomenal effort in starting to hold down that curve and starting to bend that curve back to a more sustainable level. In our western suburbs, we have 547 cases today, just under 30%. And again, that's been holding fairly steadily for the last couple of weeks. 73 cases in our eastern suburbs, and then still 17 cases where we're working out the allocation. In regional Victoria, we had 153 new cases overnight. Again, a fairly consistent 8% of today's statewide cases in various regional locations. The ones I think of particular interest, we've seen a bit of a spike up again in Mitchellshire, 23 cases there, but a vast majority of those are linked. Only 4 new households involved in Mitchellshire, and I think we understand those linkages fairly well. There is significant work happening in Greater Bendigo, with 22 new cases identified overnight, and a lot of these are generating from some of those exposure sites that are listed on our website and those of our colleagues at Loddon Mallee Public Health. Particularly, we have a gym and a hairdressers that have generated significant exposures and onward cases and transmission. I would urge people in Greater Bendigo, particularly if you are symptomatic, and particularly if you're connected to those exposure sites, please come and get tested. The testing stations have been pretty busy for the last few days, so if you're generally worried and keen to get tested, please wait a day or two. But if you are symptomatic or if you've been identified as a primary close contact, please come and get tested today. In Greater Geelong, we have 21 cases, all connected and known to known cases in households and to some exposure sites. I'm pleased to see a lower number of cases in Wodonga today, with only 3 cases overnight after a fairly big day yesterday with 13 new cases. Obviously, we continue to work very closely with our colleagues in New South Wales around the cross-border dynamics of this outbreak in Wodonga. There is a drive-through testing facility set up at Vermont Street that I would guide people to. And also, of course, people in Wodonga can cross the border as border residents and get tested in Albury. I do apologise. I know it's been a busy couple of days there for heavy testing demand, as we've not seen this number of cases before in Wodonga. But again, additional testing resources put in place for today. I'd urge people who are symptomatic and people who are connected to the outbreak to get tested first. People who are generally a bit anxious, please wait a day or two and we'll get you tested a bit further down the road. And then finally, in terms of our regional scan, we have Mildura. 15 cases today. It's a bit up on yesterday's 6. We'd like to have seen a lower number, but they are all mostly linked. We understand all within existing households. There's 2 new households in that set, but again, we understand the linkages between them. Again, we've seen a phenomenal testing response in Mildura over the last few days. Another over 1,000 tests done yesterday. A really, really consistent performance by the whole Mildura community to come out and get tested, and also to get vaccinated. We've seen a significant increase in vaccination levels now over the last 10 days in Mildura. We've risen up to a 95% first dose rate, so higher even by regional Victorian standards. But the second dose rate has increased by more than 12 percentage points, from 52.5% 10 days ago to over 63% today or yesterday. So really want to thank people in Mildura for coming out and getting vaccinated. We continue to work very closely, particularly through our partners at Star Health and Madas, to support local communities to make sure they get opportunities to get vaccinated and are supported in managing COVID in the community more generally. In terms of vaccination centres are the phenomenal work by Victoria's GPs, our community pharmacies, our state clinics and the various pop-up sites all across the state. We're just seeing the most phenomenal demand for vaccination, desire for vaccination. Obviously, we're getting very close now to not only to 90% first dose. I expect we'll hit that during the course of today, but also, of course, our 70% second dose levels for 16 and over, which we're confident will turn over tomorrow. Of course, the data that we report every day comes from the Commonwealth Register. That is uploaded. It usually takes a day or two for results to be uploaded, so we're usually reporting data a couple of days in arrears, but we're very confident we're on track for not only hitting 90% first dose and 70% second dose in the next couple of days, but also going on to 80% and beyond second doses. We think we will see some very high level vaccination levels across Victoria over the weeks ahead. My sense is at the moment in October, through the work of our many vaccination partners, we're on track to do over 2 million doses during the month of October. Just the most phenomenal activity. And anybody who needs still their first dose or their second dose, please come to your GPs, over 1,100 GPs, your 700 community pharmacies, any of our 56 state clinics, or the many pop-up hubs. It's a veritable Oktoberfest of vaccination opportunities this month. We really want to see people come through and get their vaccination done so we can hit those 70%, 80% and beyond thresholds as quickly and as confidently as possible. A reminder in terms of primary close contacts, and with over 60,000 people as primary close contacts, and it's a challenging thing to be asked to do, to be told to do. If you're an associate of a positive case, to have to isolate or quarantine for 14 days. From Friday, if you are a primary close contact from a workplace contact or a social contact, if you're fully vaccinated, you will only need to isolate for 7 days, quarantine for 7 days on a day 1 and a day 6 negative test. That is a recognition of what we're seeing as the lower risk that the fully vaccinated community represents, and also, of course, reducing the impact of positive cases continuing in our community. Can I finish the script, Rich, and I'll come back and we'll go on to the backdated part, if that's all right. And then finally, in terms of schools, taking off my stride, Rich, I'll answer the question now. So yes, it does backdate it. So anybody who is on a day 6 tomorrow, so if you're an existing primary close contact, not living in a household with a positive case, and if you're fully vaccinated, If you're on day 6 tomorrow, you can go and get yourself a test. If you test negative, then you will be released from your quarantine period. And then finally, obviously, with a lot of movement around schools, and of course, regional schools already been open for a couple of weeks under various arrangements. But here in Melbourne, Prep 1 and 2, and of course, those Year 12s and 11s have already started going back into schools. And from Friday, we're seeing a part-time return to all students. And in regional Victoria, of course, all students return full-time on Friday. There are, of course, a lot of preparation work's been done by schools and our colleagues in the education department and health teams to get ready for schools reopening for these really important weeks between now and the end of the year. And as a result, we've worked on a schools outbreak management plan that also recognises that we expect to see significant numbers of positive cases of kids who will be going into school, who will subsequently test positive, and schools will need to manage and be supported to manage implications of that. What that outbreak management plan does also is recognise the number of measures that schools have put in place over the last few weeks. Of course, the age purifiers, the guidelines around mask wearing, the increasing vaccination status, particularly of staff, but also older students, and of course the investment in outdoor learning spaces and the whole changing nature of how school communities are doing their best to minimise the impact of positive cases. What that also means is that when we see positive cases in schools, we'll take a school-by-school approach, but the focus will be on identifying a small number of primary close contacts that a positive student may have had contact with. We're looking to minimise the number of all school congregations together, and of course to reduce the impact of transmission within the school setting. That also means we think there'll be a lower requirement to close schools, so we would expect schools not to need to close for extended periods of time, maybe for a short period of time, just to identify those primary close contacts and to do very precise spot cleaning in those areas where the positive cases have been, rather than an extended closure period for deep cleaning. These are all risk-based decisions that we've made with our colleagues in the education team and obviously under the guidance of the public health team. But it's all around striking that new balance where schools can continue to open to support kids to really resume their face-to-face learning and to move on in confidence through to the end of the year. With that, the Minister and I will continue to take questions. Thank you, Richard.
We're going to hit 70% today, probably sometime. We're tracking towards 70% vaccination today. Is there any chance that we could bring forward the easing of restrictions tomorrow lunchtime?
Well, shortly, no. So, look, I think as the Premier made clear on, and the Chief Health Officer made clear on Sunday, we were originally projected the 26th of October to hit our 70% deadline. Our revised projections, based on everything that we're seeing, says that we'll hit that date tomorrow. And as a result, midnight tomorrow, all those easing measures take place and we start to get those freedoms back and lockdown ends. And I think it's obviously a day that we're all really looking forward to. Look, at this stage of the game, whether we hit that threshold at 9 p.m. tonight or whether we hit it at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning with the 70% vaccination, I think that's a slightly immaterial thing. I think all of us, both as citizens, but also as I'm sure businesses, are also now very clearly geared towards that midnight tomorrow night deadline. So we'll stay on track with that. And of course, our focus now moves to the 80% threshold. We want to get to that as soon as possible. So,
have you got projections on that, or are we going to get there earlier than next?
Look, I think the current date we've got in the target in the roadmap is the 5th of November or the 6th of November. The rates we're looking at the moment indicate that we'll beat that, but it also depends on all of our behaviours. And what we've seen is the most phenomenal surge of vaccination over the last few weeks. That's allowed us to get to 70% that much earlier. We really like to maintain that. It would be a wonderful problem to have if we're going to hit the 80% mark, well before the 5th of November. I think we have every opportunity to do that if I look at the rates, but it does need all of us to keep going, and particularly to get those second doses done. That's a really important thing. So for all those, over almost 5.1 million Victorians that have had their first dose, make sure you've got your second dose booked in. And if you can bring it forward, bring it forward. Let's get it done.
To what extent do case numbers contribute to this factor? So if they're sitting around the 1,800 mark,
Yep.
as they are, will that kind of impact the decision, or do you want to see that downward decline in numbers?
Oh, look, I mean, number one, it's obviously it's a judgment and a decision for the Chief Health Officer, not for the logistician like me. But I think from behalf of the team, what we'd say is the Burnett roadmap set out very clearly what those guide rails were and what our expected trajectory was. We are, bang on with the revised Burnett timeline in terms of our case numbers, our hospitalisation numbers and our ICU numbers. We'll watch those very, very carefully over the coming days. Now, we'd all love to see case numbers go down, and the latest Burnett modelling indicates a fairly modest reduction in case numbers over the days ahead, and then expects an increase again when we pass 80% double dose, as we see much more activity taking place in the community. But look, we're all part of that. We all, as Victorians, can make sure we're vaccinated. We can all stick with COVID safe protocols. We can all get tested when we're symptomatic, and we can all do the isolation if that's what we need to do to minimise the spread. Yeah, the gist of your question is right. If the case numbers start to accelerate, and crucially our hospitalisation numbers start to accelerate, then we'd have real cause for concern, and that will slow down any future easing that we can do. We'd all like to avoid that.
Jerome, does Mildura come out of lockdown at the same time as Melbourne?
So, Mark, look, we're reviewing Mildura again today, and we'd hope to land and make a very clear announcement tomorrow morning. I think, talking to the team in Mildura this morning, again, phenomenal work by all the local players, St Roger Co Health, the base hospital, Madas and others. Look, we think it's tracking in a pretty good place at the moment. We'll take a review tonight. We'll make a final decision tomorrow morning.
A lot of bars are planning to open from midnight tomorrow. Will the curfew still apply if people are on their way to go to the pub at midnight tomorrow?
So Rachel, that's an interesting detailed question. So look, I think yes, the curfew applies until midnight tomorrow night.
So people can't leave their homes until midnight and then they're free to?
That will be the implication of how the directions work. That's right. So the directions change at midnight tomorrow night. So there's no leave pass between 9 p.m. and midnight tomorrow night. So you'll have to wait for the witching hour to strike, and then you can make your way down to the local pub. I'm sure there'll be some pubs that'll be open.
Are police seriously going to fine people at that point? I mean, doesn't it become a bit
I think two things. One, obviously, that's a matter for the Chief Commissioner, and he's been pretty clear about the approach he takes on enforcement. And can I also just say, I saw some VicPol colleagues this morning, the phenomenal work done by VicPol over many, many months of really difficult conditions and restrictions that we've all had to live with. And can I just thank them for their work in enforcing those with such integrity and strength and humanity. I think in terms of, this is the real point for me is it's around, what behaviours we all want to encourage. We all want to go and have a drink at midnight tomorrow night, or after midnight. I might wait till the next day. We all want to enjoy those new freedoms, and I'm sure we all will. But can we all please just remember, this is one important step. It's not a mass freedom day. It's not a mass let's go completely nuts. There is still a significant risk. We still have 800 people in hospital at this point in time. We'd like to really make sure they get well. We'd like to minimise the number of new people that go to hospital over the weeks and months ahead. And our healthcare workers are going to continue to work very, very hard over November, December, and January to deal with that surge of people who we think will need care. And that's something we just need to bear in mind. So the more responsibly we all behave, and absolutely, let's go back to pubs, let's go back to hospital, let's go back to retail, do all those things, but can we just please do it in a sensible way?
What about workers that want to get to those businesses to open at midnight? Can they leave home before midnight?
No, because they're not essential workers, and again, that's something that the business will need to manage. So I'm all up for people saying, I'm genuinely all up for people saying we're going to open up and do these amazing things at midnight tomorrow night. But can we just recognise we're hitting that date 6 days early? That's a phenomenal achievement of everybody who's gone out and got vaccinated. Can we all just get there sensibly and not sort of crash the door down on the way in?
On hospitality and the mandatory vax by Friday, I believe, for those workers, is that staying put? That's 100%. There's no wiggle room, or it can just be one.
No, there's no wiggle room, because I think all of us, the reason we're opening up from midnight tomorrow night is because the vast majority of us are fully vaccinated, and we'd expect that people who are now being asked to please come back into work are the first ones to have got themselves organised to get themselves fully vaccinated so they can serve their customers. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable proposition to me.
Do you think, though, it's caught some venues off guard that we're opening and now they're struggling to find staff?
I wouldn't have thought so. And again, I mean, if over 7 out of 10 of us are vaccinated, then finding people to work should not be the vaccination problem shouldn't be the barrier that's in the way. And we've been talking about vaccination for the last 6 months, but we've been talking about the critical relationship between the vaccination thresholds and opening up since the end of August, beginning of September. So we've all had a long time to get used to this. And look, the sheer number of people getting vaccinated every day, we're getting close to 100,000 people now getting vaccinated every single day, indicates that we've all kind of got that message that we need to be vaccinated to enjoy those freedoms. And I think as the Premier and others said yesterday, it will be bizarre to be in a world where we've said you can only be a customer at these places if you're fully vaccinated, but the staff somehow don't need to be vaccinated. That doesn't really stack up.
At the moment, healthcare workers need to have made a booking to have a vaccination by the 29th of October.
Yep.
Hospitality workers are going to have to be double vaxxed by Friday.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense? I mean, surely healthcare is a much more vulnerable setting than the pub. Does that make sense?
Look, it does make, it does make sense. Bear in mind, healthcare workers are already 99.x% vaccinated. I mean, we've seen phenomenal uptake of vaccination in the healthcare sector. Bear in mind, it is also a contractual issue for healthcare workers in terms of their ability to continue to work. So as we've done with construction, as we've done with healthcare workers, as we've done with aged care workers, those are clearly announced timelines because there are mandatory requirements for those people to work full stop. That's why we've made those commitments at various earlier stages in the programme. They continue to be relevant. They're also, bear in mind, this is one of the consequences of pulling forward these deadlines. The fact that we can all enjoy going out from midnight tomorrow night, as opposed to having to wait another 5 days for the 26th of October, is because we've overachieved our vaccination targets. From my point of view, that's a good problem to have. If that means that for some businesses they're going to struggle to find people, then that's a bit of organisational planning that I think, I'm sure that people will do and find a way around. And there are plenty of places to get vaccinated. So if your workforce is not vaccinated yet, if they haven't had their second dose yet, provided they've had the 3-week interval, they can go and get it done today. They can go and get it done tomorrow.
But don't you acknowledge that it can be a little bit confusing, because the first industries that we heard of were construction, healthcare workers, residential aged care, who all now have second dose dates that they have to be required to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated by, which are now later than some like hospitality and will be for retail when we hit 80%.
Yeah, but
do you think that was properly communicated? I suppose is the question.
Oh, look, I think we've been very deliberate and very careful to communicate, particularly with those earlier sectors, because bear in mind they were active earlier. So when we were opening up sectors under lockdown restrictions, because they are essential sectors that we needed to ensure they're ready, and particularly to Rachel's question around healthcare workers now face the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges of their professional lives as they deal with a really challenging time in our healthcare sector. We absolutely want to make sure, I will get to it, we really want to make sure that they're fully vaccinated. I think now as we're starting to open up the rest of the economy, that's always been on the terms of we're starting to progressively open up. So it's not as if all retailers back on midnight tomorrow night. It's not as if all hospo can fully fire up yet in terms of full capacity yet. We know there are still difficult constraints in place for hospo and for those other retail sectors, but expecting that the early returnees are fully vaccinated in the same way as we required it in the construction industry and in healthcare workers. I think that's entirely consistent, and I think that's what all Victorians would generally expect.
So do you understand why some business owners, though, might be a little bit confused when they say, why can't I have one of my workers who's single dose vaccinated and intending to get their second dose, I can't have them on staff from Friday, but a teacher is able to go back and teach on Friday and doesn't have to be fully vaccinated until the 29th of November.
Oh, look! I get the fact that when you start to reopen up, that there are going to be logistical and planning problems for all organisations. We didn't want to get into the world where for every single sector in the economy we had bespoke timelines around what you had to do when. As you start to open up, you have to start to set more broader guidelines for the whole community that says, look, in order for you to go into one of these places, you have to be fully vaccinated. It will be illogical, I think, to be in an environment that says, but the staff don't need to be vaccinated yet, they get an extra 2 or 3 weeks to do that. Does that mean that from a business point of view, you've got to plan that in? It's another thing you've got to manage, absolutely. But all the business owners I know and the ones I've been speaking to over the last few months, have been impatient to get done and are just getting their staff ready as quickly as possible, getting ready for opening up. And I think this is all part of that job that they have to do.
Question relating to the situation in the northern Victoria, Mildura, Swan Hill, regarding the Aboriginal communities up there. Got cases where people don't have transport, so they're not getting tested or vaccinated, or they're catching cabs, and there's the risk of spread there. What is the government doing to, I guess, help improve testing and vaccination in those communities, and making sure people aren't spreading it when they hop in alternative transport? Yeah, look, I mean, there's
a phenomenal amount of work happening currently, certainly with our Aboriginal communities, particularly up in the northwest. So Madas at the moment is leading not only the testing but also the support and the relief of some of our most important communities in that part of Victoria. We've also deployed, and I think we announced this a few weeks ago, Rich, we've deployed a number of mobile mobile vaccination vans and mobile testing teams who are literally going door to door into those communities to arrange for testing and vaccination for people who can't get tested any other way, or who can't get vaccinated any other way. I think yesterday we did something like 30 vaccinations with one of our vans that went right into the heart of a local community to make sure that people had a safe and a comfortable and appropriate place to get their vaccination done. So, yeah, as a vaccination programme moves from the kind of shock and awe of Jeff Shed and the Royal Exhibition Building and the large volumes we've been talking about, we now move into those really localised and targeted vaccination drives through the pop-ups that we've been talking about over the last few days, through the mobile vans going into Aboriginal communities, into other communities, to give people every opportunity to get vaccinated. Because this is really important as we start to open up from tomorrow midnight, where we've got pockets of under-vaccination, those people will be potentially much more vulnerable. We want to make sure they get every opportunity to get the vaccination work complete.
Do you have an update on COVID cases at the Park Hotel among asylum seekers and refugees?
I don't, I'm afraid. No, I can put it in the show release this afternoon.
Jerome, Victoria is looking at trialling home quarantine for overseas travels. I believe there's a trial flight on October the 27th coming in from London to Tullamarine. Why do Victorians need to, or travellers rather, need to quarantine for 7 days when New South Wales are letting international travellers come through freely? Yeah,
look, this is slightly outside my area of responsibility, so I might ask you to talk to CQV about the nature of the trial and what they're going on with at this point in time.
Could we ask the Minister on that matter?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
International travellers will be trialled to come home on October the 27th. There's a flight coming in from London to Tullamarine. They'll simply need to self-quarantine for 7 days here in Victoria. However, in New South Wales, international travellers can come through without having to quarantine. They can travel freely. So why do we need to implement a 7-day home quarantine procedure?
Well, I think that would be dependent upon the advice from the Chief Health Officer. We've always followed the public health advice on these matters and we'll continue to do so.
Minister, the Privacy Watchdog has ordered the release of more than 100 pages of Health Department briefings relating to the advice of the February lockdown. Will you release that advice and will you release it for all of our 6 lockdowns?
Yeah, so as I understand, OVIC have recently made this determination and the Department of Health is considering that request and will respond accordingly in due course.
Why hasn't it already been released?
Well, I mean, OVIC, as I understand, recently made this determination and the Department of Health is considering that determination by OVIC and will be making a determination in due course.
Should the government be transparent and sort of providing this information to Victoria?
Well, I mean, we've got systems and processes in place. OVIC have done its job, it's made its determination, and it's up to the Department of Health to consider that request and make a determination as a result of reviewing that determination by OVIC.
Are we likely to see these documents released?
Well, Gay, that's not for me to comment on. I'm mindful of the fact that OVIC has made its determination and the Department of Health will need to consider that and absorb that determination and make a determination accordingly.
Why don't Victorians have a right to the information that has and the advice that has essentially resulted in them having, a greater degree of government control over their lives than ever before?
Well, I think what I would say is since the start of this pandemic, the Premier, the Minister for Health, other ministers have made themselves available on a daily basis to come before you to explain the decisions that we've made as a cabinet, as a government, to put ourselves before the Fourth Estate and to answer questions. We've done so consistently and regularly from the very start of this pandemic and will continue to do so. And in relation to this specific matter, as I understand it, OVIC have recently made this determination. The Department of Health will consider that determination and respond accordingly.
There's been some criticism that Victoria's public health advice has been too cautious, too conservative compared to other states. Do you think that's fair? Would you like to see us replicate New South Wales particularly?
Oh, look, I mean, I think our public health team have done an outstanding job through very trying and difficult circumstances. The public health team have made themselves regularly available at conferences like these right from the very start of this pandemic. I'm really proud of the work that the Department of Health have engaged on and the work that they've done throughout this pandemic.
But are we being too cautious? Our hospitalisations have been significantly lower than New South Wales. That's something that we've managed to keep people out of hospital. So why are we opening up much slower than New South Wales, and why are we being so cautious?
Oh, well, I don't agree with that. I don't believe we are being cautious. I think that New South Wales is opening up before us because they've got a primary allocation of vaccines ahead of us. They will put to the front of the queue when it came to vaccination, so it follows logically that the state of New South Wales will hit those targets of 70% and 80% before us. What I would say is if you look at what's occurred in more recent times, Victorians have been getting themselves vaccinated at great rates. 1.8 million Victorians have connected their vaccination certificate to their Service Victoria app since midnight Monday of last week. So Victorians are powering ahead and doing an enormous amount of work to make sure they're ready to embrace a COVID normal and to start to embark upon what life looks like once we relax those restrictions. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done, and I want to thank Victorians for the dedication they've shown in getting themselves vaccinated, connecting their vaccination certificate to their Service Victoria app, because that's the pathway out of this pandemic.
Minister, the Victorians have put a lot of trust into the government's decisions on this, and we are now officially the most locked down city in the world. So don't you think at base minimum they at least deserve to see the documents that helped make these health decisions?
Well, again, I mean, look, this is a matter for, look, these documents are not my documents. They're documents that reside within the Department of Health. As I understand it, OVIC have recently made this determination, and the Department of Health need to consider that determination and respond accordingly.
Have you seen the documents before?
Well, I'm not the Minister for Health. So.
I think Victorians would be shocked by what they find in these documents.
I think Victorians should be very proud of all their sacrifices and their efforts, and they should be really proud of the fact that they've gone out and they've got themselves vaccinated in record numbers. They've downloaded their certificate into the Service Victoria app at a faster rate than New South Wales, as I understand it. So more Victorians have connected their vaccination certificate to their Service Victoria app than has occurred in New South Wales. Victorians should be really proud of everything that they have done throughout this pandemic. And we are standing on the cusp of a new dawn, of new freedoms and liberties. This is something to be celebrated about. And I think that if you look at the fact that we're going to be able to have the bowl activated on the 30th of October, the fact that we're going to have crowds at the Melbourne Cup, the fact that we're going to have a summer like no other, is something to be celebrated. And it's the great social dividend that Victorians are due because of the sacrifices that they've made.
Back on Rich and Chanel's question earlier, Catherine Bennett and Nick Coatsworth have written today that the interpretation of inconclusive evidence in a conservative way has become a trademark approach of the Victorian health authorities' approach to this pandemic. They've cited curfews and playgrounds as examples of that, and many other examples. Are they wrong?
Well, look, I mean, they are. They've got their professional opinion. They're entitled to their professional opinion. But I stand by each and every decision this government's made throughout the course of the pandemic. We are now in this position where we can start to reopen, and we can start to celebrate, and we can start to enjoy the things that define us as a state. This is something to be celebrated, and that's where I think most Victorians are looking eagerly forward to.
Can I just clarify, sorry, you said that the Health Department are actively looking into whether to release those briefings. Is that for just the February lockdown, or will it be for all 6 lockdowns?
I don't know. I think, as I understand it, OVIC have recently made this determination, and the Department of Health need to consider that, and they will respond accordingly.
As a Senior Minister, would you like to see those briefings released?
Well, it's not for me to make these sorts of, unilateral sort of, off-the-wall sort of comments. I mean, I think that we have systems and processes in place, and it's appropriate that process is followed, and the Department of Health will carefully consider this determination by OVIC, and they will make their response accordingly.
Minister, a sign's gone up at Seaford Beach saying, as of 11:59 Thursday the 21st, beach access will be restricted to only those who are fully vaccinated, excluding children under 12. Victoria Police can issue on-the-spot fines. It appears to have come from the government. Is that something you're aware of?
Look, that's not something I'm aware of. I'm happy to come back to you on that and get some further advice, but yeah, that's not something that I'm aware of.
Minister, on hotel quarantine, just back to that earlier question, what is the future of Victoria's hotel quarantine program, given New South Wales has scrapped theirs altogether? We're doing trials down here, but the Premier did mention earlier this week that it probably won't have it won't continue to go on. So where does it stand? What's the timeline for the program? Yeah,
look, it's a good question, and I think that we are in a bit of a we've got to carefully consider the program going forward. We've got issues in relation to borders opening up, and how do you treat people who have been double vaccinated as those who have only been single vaccinated or not vaccinated at all. We have to think about what that looks like in terms of people coming in from overseas. So I think that in fairness, there's a lot in this, and it's going to take time to step our way through it and work our way through it carefully. But certainly I think Emma Cassar and the team at CQV have done a fantastic job. They've worked tirelessly for the best part of a year, and I can speak from experience from my time as the minister, the acting minister responsible for hotel quarantine. They've done a fantastic job in keeping us all safe.
Was the trial that was the trial that we have going ahead with this London flight, was that something that was set up before New South Wales scrapped their hotel quarantine program?
I don't know. I'm happy to come back to you on that. Yeah, I couldn't say one way or the other, Chanel.
Do you know which technology we'll be using for those who are involved in the trial?
Oh, look, that's still to be worked through and determined. There's a number of different technological solutions currently being deployed, and we'll work our way through that.
When the Premier's been asked about this issue of us still having home quarantine and New South Wales scrapping it over the past few days, he's pointed to it being a Commonwealth jurisdictional issue in terms of borders, and he said that there'll be more discussions at National Cabinet. Does that mean that Victoria is going to go to National Cabinet pushing for New South Wales' decision to be overturned?
Look, I think the Premier is best placed to answer those specific questions. I think what the Premier is referring to is that borders remain the responsibility of the Commonwealth. Obviously, we will look at what New South Wales is doing, and we'll continue to try and find a way through these complex issues. They are complex, in terms of trying to looking at people coming back and where they go and the like. It is a bit involved in that.
Are you concerned that Victoria is missing out on people flying directly to Victoria while this current situation exists? I mean, why would you fly to Victoria and do quarantine if you could get out of doing it by going directly to Sydney?
Well, I think 200 people are supposed to be coming back here on a flight from London, so I think that people will want to come back to Melbourne.
Thousands in the meantime have been booking flights through Sydney.
Well, I think that people will be coming back to Melbourne, and again, we need to follow the health advice, and we need to work and understand the implications of these sorts of decisions and what role technology will play in that.
Minister, sorry if it wasn't clear, but can you just confirm that hospitality workers have to be double jabbed to work on Friday? I think the website is still saying single.
Okay, I will come back to you on that point and clear up any issues with that website. But I think that, as Jerome has said, and as I've heard the Premier say on a number of occasions, and the Premier's given the example of going to a pub, that makes no sense that you're asking that patrons be double vaccinated, but the bar attendant is not vaccinated. So I think that it's only fair and reasonable that the attendants are fully vaccinated. If you've identified an error in the website, then we'll look into that and come back to you.
Sorry, and will that include children? Customers, if they're between 12 and 16 years old, will they also need to be double jabbed?
I might turn to Jerome on that, or do we know? I might need to come back to you. I might need to come back to you on that. One thing I would say is I would just want to thank all the parents out there who have got their kids vaccinated from the ages of 12 to 16. I think if you look at the take-up rate, it's been a stellar take-up rate, and it's something that, as many of us as parents with children of that age, it's something we've been very proud to do.
And how would they check in? And also to that, can you upload multiple vaccination certificates to Services Victoria?
Not yet, but that's something we're working on. As all of you would know, in terms of the journey that Service Victoria's been on, we've constantly improved the offering. So you might recall that originally with the original version of Service Victoria, you could only check in, and then we've subsequently added the add another function. We've developed the kiosk function. We'll be looking at making further changes and reforms to the app, because we're really focused on enhancing the user experience. We want to make it easy as possible for people to use. But of course, not everyone's going to have a smartphone. Not everyone's going to be technically or technologically literate, and that's why we're allowing people to download a hard copy of their vaccination certificate and use that to present that. I haven't been able to see my mum and dad recently, but I told them that they needed to download a copy of their certificate, because I know that one's got a smartphone and doesn't know how to use it, and the other one doesn't have a smartphone and therefore doesn't know how to use it. So these are sensible steps we're making.
With the gig holding next weekend, Is this a bit of a slap in the face for all those small venues that were ready to open this Friday, the hundreds of small bands and venues that would just be happy with 20 people, and only 4,000 people can go to this event next weekend? When are they going to get some certainty that they can start booking gigs?
Yeah, well, look, I think with the bowl, this is a trial. This is a trial to test the technology. It's a chance for people to get out. It's a chance to operate a fantastic event in a COVID-safe way, and we will continue to work with the sector and to support the sector through what's been a really challenging time. You know, I've met with the sector on numerous occasions in various roundtables and various forums where we've discussed these issues, and I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that the sector has had to go through this for the last 19 months. It's been an incredibly challenging and difficult time. But we stand ready to support the sector and work with the sector. You might recall that I was here a few weeks ago where we announced $15 million in support funding for sustaining creative workers as well as sustaining creative organisations. We stand ready to support the sector to get through what is a challenging and difficult time. And I have every confidence that over the coming days and weeks and months, because Victorians have done the right thing, Victorians have gone out and got themselves vaccinated, we'll be in the position where we can start to open up, and it will be a renaissance on live music in this city, in this state.
Just on that, it's great to see this announcement reactivate the sector. I know it's been struggling, welcomed news, but a lot of the events companies we've spoken to, those smaller operators, are calling for more than 150 indoors and 500 outdoors. So how long do you need to see, I guess, the results of this trial event to see how we can help reactivate the $12 billion sector?
Well, look, at every step along the way, we have to follow the health advice. And the important thing about trials is we can start to test the technology, we can start to test the user experience, we can try and see what happens in a real life set of circumstances. We'll also have the benefit of seeing what is happening in New South Wales and what their reopening does in terms of their case numbers and their hospital load. And we've just got to step our way through this very carefully and very slowly. And I know that is difficult for the sector, and I know that is a frustration for some. But that's why we've provided this level of support. That's why we've provided, more broadly, $11 billion in support to business since the start of this pandemic, because we recognise some of these, really challenging set of circumstances that business is going through, and we'll continue to work with them. This event will be on October 30. In a matter of days after that event, we'll hit 80%, and you'll start to see the reopening. And I'll continue to work with the sector and stand with them every step of the way to get to the other side of this. And we will, right? We will get through this. It's just going to take a bit of time and patience.
They are feeling like they have been left off the roadmap. So can you give any indicative date or time frame in terms of when they can help reactivate?
Oh, look, I meet with the sector regularly. I think I've got another roundtable with them this week. I think there's another one planned for next week. I'll continue to work with the sector. It's going to be guided by the outcomes of the trials. It's going to be following the health advice and seeing what's happening in a real life set of circumstances. But what I would say to the sector is we value you. We value your craft. We value your profession. We value the work that you do in helping define who we are as a people and as a state. I know this is difficult, I know this is challenging, but that's why we're providing this level of funding support, and we'll continue to support the sector. I know it's difficult, but we've just got to get through to 80%, and then we can start to see that reopening occur, and we'll get to the other side of this.
As a creative industry minister, what did you make of the roadmap typo for entertainment venues yesterday?
Oh, I think the Premier's indicated that it was an error involving a high-level document. What I would say is I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it raised people's hopes momentarily, briefly on Sunday.
Businesses sold out 8 shows. So how momentarily was the mistake?
Well, I think that probably goes to the fact that people are really hungry for live music or entertainment. I think that the venue you're referring to is a live comedy. And if you look at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, we know Melburnians love their comedy. So it's no great surprise that there's that real pent-up energy and demand. I've got no doubt these tickets at the Bowl will just sell really, really quickly. So I think that it's no great surprise that it sold quickly. I'm sorry that that's occurred. I'm sorry for any distress that any venue operator felt on Sunday. But look, just be patient. You know, we are so close. We are so close because of all the work that Victorians have done. Like, this is just within our grasp. You know, dawn is emerging, and it's going to be a great celebration. And this summer, like, you're going to see an activation across this city and across this state like we've never seen before. And the bowl is going to be just a celebration, and it will be joyous. So I know it's challenging, I know it's difficult, but you know, Victorians have got so much to be proud of. They've done so well, and you know, we'll get through this.
Should the government have issued a clarification as soon as this happened, rather than pretending it hadn't happened for 2 days and then trivialising it by describing it as a typo?
Oh, look, I wouldn't agree with those characterisations. I mean, when the error was found, the government acted. You know, I'm standing here as the minister responsible for the creative industries, and I'm sorry for any inconvenience or any pain that error made.
The bulking was initially announced a week and a half or so ago. Why has it taken until 10 days beforehand to confirm who's actually playing?
Oh, well, I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot involved in an event like this. So we need to work out the lineup. You know, clearly we can't get international acts. You know, we've got to identify, you know, whether people are available. We've got to make sure that the COVID safe plan meets the specifications of the Chief Health Officer. We need to make sure the Chief Health Officer feels that an event like this can go ahead. It takes time. It takes time. But it's going to be worth the wait, because this is just, you know, seriously, this is going to go off like a Cold Chisel tribute band at the Burvale on a Saturday night.
So
like, it's going to go off.
Did you have any of these details locked in when you announced it?
We indicated that we knew the date because of the fact that people have done such a great job in terms of getting vaccinated, and we knew that we could align this as a trial. But you know, you've got to work on those finer details, and we've got to make sure that on any trial that we do, it's got to be COVID safe. We want to make sure that it's consistent with the directions of the Chief Health Officer. As you'd appreciate, that takes time. There's a robust process in place that you've got to stick to and abide by.
And Hamilton opened in Sydney last night at 75% capacity. I'm
sorry?
Hamilton opened in Sydney last night at 75% capacity. Are you hoping to be able to bring forward some of the capacity, lift the capacity numbers for entertainment venues at 80%, more than it's already been announced in the roadmap?
Oh, well, I think with these things, we'll want to try and get as many of these events back open and operational as soon as we possibly can. You know, we'll continue to work with the sector to try and give them the support that they need. But yeah, look, I mean, because of all the great work that Victorians have made and done, you know, we are now in this wonderful position that we can start to consider this, you know, rich selection of offerings that are available for us.
There have been a suggestion that tickets for this might be reserved for healthcare workers as a reward for their hard work during the pandemic. Is there a reason you decided not to do that?
We want to make this available for as many people as possible. So the price point, I think, is at $29.90. So it's very affordable to see, you know, 6 great acts for a price like that. And I've got no doubt, you know, Melburnians will rush to the Arts Centre Melbourne site to purchase these tickets.
And Minister, what does the future of events essentially look like in Victoria? Do you think it'll only be operating to a vaccinated economy, or next year will the unvaccinated continue to be locked out?
Sorry, could you repeat?
So what do the future of events look like in Victoria? So will it only operate to a vaccinated economy, or do you think next year you'll open it up to the unvaccinated?
Oh, look, I mean, again, it'll be dependent upon the health advice. And we have to, I mean, we're doing these trials because we want to see what it's like and see how it works in practice. We'll continue to observe the results. We'll continue to follow the health advice. You know, I don't think any of us want to have these settings in place for a moment longer than what they need to be. And I'm, you know, very hopeful and very confident that this next summer will be, you know, a summer like no other.
Jerome, can I ask you a question quickly?
Yep. On children who aren't eligible to get vaccinated, is the advice that they can go anywhere with vaccinated parents? So if their vaccinated parents are booking into a restaurant, can they go with them, children aged 0 to 12?
I'll need to come back to you on to be specific. I think that would be the case. I mean, if you think about it logically, if you've got 2 parents and they're double vaccinated and you've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, you can't leave them home. So I think the answer to that would be yes, but I'll make sure we can come back to you on that, Chanel. Right.
Thanks, Jerome. Can I ask you a question? Of course,
Just your opinion on this public health advice regarding February's lockdown. Do you think it should be released to the public?
It's not my advice. I have no opinion on it.
Have you read it though?
Look, it's not. No, short answer is no. It's not my job to provide public health advice. It's the job of the Chief Health Officer.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, good. Thank you all.
Not severe, which is a bit of a miracle. Looking at the damage caused by the derailment, it's a miracle someone wasn't killed or at least seriously injured. And a man was seen running from the scene just prior to the collision, and he's certainly a focus of the investigation. We'd like that person to come forward.